Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Nick and this is On Buddhism, a series of introductory video lectures on the topics of Buddhism. Once again, I'm here at the ancestral home, my mom's house, where spring has sprung, and in the background you can hear the leaves rustling and the birds singing. I'm here to continue topics on the life of the Buddha. When we just left Siddhartha, he had left his noble life to seek the cessation of suffering. He had encountered age, illness, and death, and he had decided to leave his sheltered life to find how to alleviate the suffering of the world, how to alleviate the suffering of his world in particular. It's most important that he sought to alleviate the suffering of his world so that he could go on and teach that method to others. It's most important that he did not try and seek immortality. He did not try and seek imperviousness to illness. He did not try and seek eternal youth. He tried to change his relationship with them, and that's something that we can all do. So upon leaving the palace to live a life of a spiritual mendicant, he first entered the tutelage of a teacher who taught him some interesting meditative exercises where he could experience the sphere of nothingness. And the Buddha took to this very easily and very well, very quickly. He was able to meditate without any effort whatsoever, and it was incredible how easily he could slip into a very meditative state. The teacher offered him leadership in the group, in the movement, the spiritual movement that he was a part of. The Buddha was satisfied with his teachings, but he did not want to be a leader of that group. He had found some good meditative methods, but he hadn't found what he was really looking for. So he moved on to another teacher. This other teacher taught him a deeper, more sophisticated meditative method, which is the sphere of perception and non-perception. But again, he was very good at this, but he couldn't find what he was really looking for. He had found mindfulness, he had found comfort, he had found stillness, but he hadn't found the alleviation of his suffering. So he tried another method, another two methods. The first method was extreme starvation. The Buddha entered a period where he only ate 1 spoonful of bean soup per day. In the course of this, he became very, very, very skinny, of course, and his hair began to fall out. That didn't work. It didn't work to alleviate his suffering, and he didn't reach any sort of deeper mindfulness that way. The other method he tried was a breathing exercise that involved holding his breath for longer and longer periods of time. That didn't work either. It just gave him headaches. So this is an important discovery that he found on his spiritual journey, even before he reached enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, is the middle way. We've often seen the happy laughing Buddha. He's a fatter representation of the Buddha. This actually isn't an image of the historical Buddha himself. This is an image of a bodhisattva called Bodhi. But we've seen that, and we've also seen the skinny Buddha who's sat in his position with his ribs showing. Some accounts say that they could even see his spine from the front during this starvation period. He found that the extremes don't work, and that's true for everybody. I keep emphasizing that this story of the Buddha is not unique to the Buddha. People can engage in extreme obsession and extreme aversion to things. People can try and accumulate as much as possible, be it as much money, as much food, as much anything, as many people, as many material possessions, and find that it's not really it's not really going to work for you. People can also become averse to things. They can try and live as simply and as minimally as possible, living only on 1 spoonful of bean soup per day. But spiritually, that doesn't work either, because spiritually, that's also its own form of starvation. What works is the middle way, where you never starve yourself with something, but you never gorge yourself with something. The middle way is very important in all things. In all things, moderation in all things, moderation. And that's a big lesson to take away from Buddhism. We can try and be the best, the very best meditator, and the very best spiritual, and the very best artist, and the very best banker, and the very best writer, and the very best construction worker, whatever we may be. And that's a good goal to have. But all things in moderation. We can work the hardest, or we can work not at all. And in both cases, something ends up missing. So why don't we find a nice happy medium in between two extremes? This involves all spiritual practice and all practice in our daily lives. One good example of this is martial arts. So as you know, as I've spoken about before, I trained in Ki Aikido at my time in Furman. And in the course of Ki Aikido, the purpose is not to be the strongest. Aikido is not a martial art for if you want to be buff and you want to hurt people and you want to beat people up. It's not something you do if you want to become strong in a physical way. It's not for the big muscles. Similarly, it's not nothing. It's not something that is just no different than walking. It's not something that's no different than laying down on the couch. Those are opposite extremes. There's complete dead relaxation, and then there's complete tension. Aikido teaches a middle way in all things, in all of our actions, and all of our experiences. This middle way is a dynamic tension, or a living relaxation. Whenever you try and bend the branch of a tree, if it's a living tree, not a dead tree or a rotted tree, if it's a living tree, it's going to flex a little bit, but it's not going to be unbreakable, and it's not going to be the strongest thing in the world, but it's also not going to be spindly and like a twig and just snap and shatter. That's something we can apply to our daily lives, and that's another example of the middle way. Being flexible, but not being limp. Being able to stand up to adversity, such as the coronavirus pandemic, but not shattering because of it. And certainly not just kind of laying down and letting it mow over you. This kind of living relaxation, this dynamic tension, is a great way to live. So in yourself, see if you can find a place in between the absolute most tense that you can possibly be and the absolute most dead relaxed you can be. I actually urge you to try this physically while we watch this video or in your own time. Try and be as tense as possible, and notice how long it takes for you to become exhausted by that, and then become just dead relaxed, and notice how long it takes for that to become unsatisfying, and then find yourself in the middle where you're dynamic and alive, but you're not tense. This is how a lot of yoga is taught as well. In yoga, you seek to stay in position, and you seek to stay able to breathe, but you're not tense. If you're flexing too hard, if you're tense, if you're just all pent up, then yoga doesn't work. You have to breathe into and out of all of your movements, and you have to breathe with your whole body and out with your whole body. And you can't do that if you have tension anywhere. So try that in your own way and check yourself day in and day out and see, am I making sure to be in the middle path, in that dynamic tension that's not this crazy, uncomfortable tense, but it's also not this just like dead, limp, relax where you can't do anything, where you can't move. Think about that, especially during the pandemic, when we're going to spend a lot of time at home doing nothing. I know that for me, it's been particularly hard to stay in a living relaxation state. Either I'm just completely melted on a couch or I'm tense about something. So focus on that. So to complete the story of the Buddha in this part, after the Buddha learns the middle way, he goes to meditate under the Bodhi tree in a place called Bodh Gaya. Bodh Gaya to this day is still a very famous and very important part of Buddhism. It's a pilgrimage site, one of several pilgrimage sites for Buddhists. And he reaches enlightenment there, under the Bodhi tree. After this, he realizes the difficulty that it would take to teach this lesson, the amount of work and the amount of difficulty he would have in taking his experience and putting it into words. But eventually he realizes that he has kind of an imperative to. He's reached enlightenment for himself, and now it's on him to help others. And so he travels to a town called Benares in India to give his first sermon. We'll leave it there, and in the next video we'll talk about his first sermon. I hope that you've taken something valuable from this and found it interesting and learned something. And I wish you all the best health and all the best happiness, especially in this time of crisis. I'll see you next time. Thank you.